Hi everybody, it's Sabrina Fox, founder of Fox Legal Training. As part of our primary market education series, I wanted to come on and illustrate something that we discussed last week in Santana Italia's doc changes review that has come up in Stada's deal today. Now, Stada is a frequent issuer. I remember reviewing their notes way back in the 2015, 16, 17 era, and I do actually have one of those OMs to use as a comparison today. But what I wanted to point out is going back to the builder basket, the different formulations that you can see of the borrower using 50% of consolidated net income less some amount of losses, or maybe not. And the reason that I thought Stada would be a great example is because in the deal that's out now for the company, they have basically the same formulation that was changed in Santana Italia's deal last week. And it is very different to how it appeared in their earlier deal that I will illustrate in a second, which I would consider to be the traditional formulation of this type of provision. So just to give you a kind of background, typically the way it works is that borrowers will build restricted payments capacity based on 50% of consolidated net income, and then this will be reduced by some measure of losses over time. The traditional way that it was done back in the baby lawyer days is that the 50% of C&I would be reduced by 100% of losses. So quarter to quarter, this calculation would take place. But over time, because some in the market don't like to take into account negative numbers or don't like numbers to go into negative territory, the zero floor provision was born, which would effectively, when it first came out, stop the basket from going below zero so that there are no negative numbers in the C&I basket, which is certainly not how it used to work, as I just mentioned. And then the most recent formulation that I've noticed and that was in Santana's deal last week and was changed is this: basically, if in any quarter that borrower makes losses or C&I is less than zero, then for that quarter, it will just be zero, which basically means that C&I never goes down. And I will illustrate this in a second. So let me just share my screen and first show you the old style of doing it, which is in using Stada's deal from 2018. So what are we looking at here? We've got the 250 million euro senior notes due 2025, and this is from 2018. I've marked the zero floor provision, which is in the limitation on restricted payments covenant. And the way that it works is the traditional way, which is the borrower's builder basket capacity will build by 50% of consolidated net income from July 1st, 2017. So notice it is backdated to whenever that would be for the borrower, probably the first time that they issued bonds. And in the case of consolidated income, in the case such consolidated net income is a deficit minus 100% of such deficit. So this formulation is what I would call method 1. Now, method 3 is how they've put it in the deal that is out this week. Again, this is this week's deal, so just going up to the beginning to show you the document that we're navigating around. We've got their deal dated today, October 7th, 2024, 1.25 billion, senior secured notes due 2030, combination of floating and fixed rate, and I marked the zero floor provision, which is in the limitation on restricted payments covenant. And it says that the builder basket will build from 50% of consolidated net income from July 1st, 2017. So it is a backdated builder basket. And the parenthetical reads, provided that such amount shall be deemed to be zero for each fiscal quarter if C&I for such fiscal quarter is less than zero. So what are the implications of this? Okay, I wanted to point out a zero floor provision as well, but in the monkey business deal, they actually have something nearer to what Stada is using, because it says no deduction for negative C&I. So it never actually goes down, but the zero floor provision basically says that the basket will never go below zero. That's what I have seen up until this deal. Obviously deals with no negative C&I, but this formulation that Stada has and that Santana Italia had last week is fairly new for me. So just going to pause my screen share, and I'm going to share a new screen. Just 1 second. Share. I'm sharing this. Share and resume. Here we go. So this document is the covenant calculation Excel that Fox Legal Training provides to all of its students, and it has in it the ability to mark down all of these different basket capacities. Now I've used this Excel spreadsheet so that I could show you the builder basket illustration. So if we have here, this borrower has consolidated net income for each of these quarters as set out here. Method 1, the standard formulation, and this is all the same, obviously. So standard formulation, borrower is doing pretty well, 80 million, then things start to go down, 20 million, then they nosedive, -50, and then -80. Back up again, 20, 50, and then another nosedive, and then recovering then. So maybe a cyclical borrower in a difficult industry. So for the standard formulation, you would take half of 80, which is 40, and 20, which is 10, and that would be 50. And then in Q3 2023, it would be completely X'd out by -50. So you'd be at 0. And then starting in the next quarter with -80, that would be the amount of the builder, -80. The next quarter would be half of 20, which is 10. So you'd be at -70. So at this formulation, the standard formulation, you have to dig yourself out of the losses. And then the next quarter, 50. So you'd take 25, and then you would be at -45. And then here, basically the point being that all the losses go down. If you're -45, it goes down again. And ultimately the amount, I believe, is -175 for the standard formulation. And then method 2, which is a zero floor, basically would be 50, and then -50 would make it 0. And then when you get to -80, it would not go below 0. It would just stay at 0 here and go back up to 20 here, or sorry, go back up to 10 here, and then it would be 35. And then obviously because it would go down again, it would be 0, but it would not go below 0 as it would in the above example. And then method 3, where no negative CNI is counted at all, which is what Stada is using in their deal, what Samatana Italia used in their deal before they changed it last week. You would have 50, and then this would be a 0. So it would just stay 50. And then this would be a 0. So it would still be 50. And then this would be 10, because 50% of 20, so then it'd be 60. And then you'd be 25, and then 0, so you'd have 85. So this shows you how drastic the difference is from each of these formulations. That the first method, the borrower is very much in the hole because they only get half of their profits, and they have to deduct all of their losses. In the second method with the zero floor, they never go below 0, but they don't have to dig themselves out of losses. And with method 3, where you don't count negative CNI at all, you build basket capacity even though you've had losses. Now, the issue that I have with this is that the 50% CNI basket is a deal struck between borrower and lenders. Basically says, look, we don't really want you to make restricted payments, but if you're doing okay, you can take 50% of the profits as long as there's no default or event of default, and you can meet the ratio test condition, and you can pay dividends, you can invest outside the restricted group, you can make restricted payments with that amount. However, if you are generating losses, we're going to reduce your credit that you made with your profits by all of the losses. Because it's only fair that if you're making losses, you shouldn't really be able to pay dividends. So this really flies in the face of that traditional agreement. And I think that's why it was changed in Samatana Italia's deal, why it was focused on by borrowers or by lenders. And I think Stada may have had it in their most recent deals. I don't have access to their more recent OMs, so I won't be able to check that. But if you would like to send one of them to me at sabrina@foxlegaltraining.com, I would be happy to check it for you. It's difficult when a provision has been in a borrower's most recent deal to change that in its new deal, just because it's already there. So they don't typically want to give up flexibility. But there has been a lender backlash against excessive dividend capacity. So it's entirely possible that lenders will take issue with that. In any event, the important thing is that we understand it. We know it's there. We know how it works. And if it's consistent in all of Stada's deals, then this is how it will work for them. But if they have tighter provisions in earlier dated deals that I do not have access to, then they will have to comply with those deals absent a consent solicitation or refinancing with new deal with terms that mirror the looser terms in their more recent deals, because that's just how it works. I hope that's been helpful and that you can understand how the different formulations work and the implications of that. If you would like access to our on-demand online leveraged finance covenant training course so that you can learn to analyze covenants like a pro, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks everyone and have a great evening.